A question that has been on my mind lately: what's the best way to watch Dragon Ball? For newer fans who want to consume everything from the movies, TV show, and specials, that can be a bit of a challenge. Today, this video is going to go over my definitive watch order guide for Dragon Ball, covering as much as I think is relevant, so there won't be any Dragon Ball heroes here. I won't be including any crossover specials either. Also, the movies don't really fit into the timeline of the show, but I'll do my best to make sense of it anyways. This list will also use Dragon Ball Kai as the main series, as the pacing and dub is better in my opinion, but I will also incorporate Dragon Ball Z filler that I think is also worth watching into the timeline. I'll try not to spoil anything. The most I'll reveal are names and minor things that you'll likely forget after you finish this video. So this list is going to be for you English dub fans, and let's just go ahead and jump into it. So you'll want to start with the original Dragon Ball. You can watch it all, but there is some filler to skip. That would be episode 45, 79 through 83, 127 and 128, and 130 through 132. Honestly though, the filler isn't really bad in Dragon Ball, so there's really no need for you to worry about skipping it. After you finish the original Dragon Ball, you can go ahead and watch the Dead Zone movie. This is optional if you do want to include the movies on your watch list. I personally prefer to watch this after the Saiyan saga. Trying to fit it into the timeline though, it makes sense to go before Kai episode 1. And so you can go ahead and watch Dragon Ball Kai episode 1 through 4. Then, if you're including filler, then you will want to do the Snake Way saga from Dragon Ball Z. That's episodes 11 through 16. Again, this list uses not all the filler from Dragon Ball Z, but some of the filler that I would suggest you watch, because a lot of this filler is kind of relevant to the culture around Dragon Ball, memes and stuff like that. Like, you'll see stuff pop up in the future if you're a fan. You'll see people reference the Snake Way saga, so I think you should check that out. Then you can watch Dragon Ball Kai episode 5 through 18. Then you can watch the World's Strongest movie. Again, that's optional. After World's Strongest, you can watch the Tree of Might. Again, optional if you're including movies. Then you can watch Dragon Ball Z, Father of Goku. Now, this gets a little bit complicated, so stay with me here. Minor spoilers. Kai opens up with a flashback to this film. It only makes sense to watch it after the Saiyan saga. It also sets the tone for the Saiyans and further establishes the background of who they are after the defeat of Vegeta. You preserve the Raditz brother reveal from earlier in Kai and bring it back up here. Then see more of Goku's dad, who was already revealed in episode 1, along with a peek into Nappa and Vegeta's dynamic. So you can kind of see how important Dragon Ball Kai is to this watch order. After that, you'll watch Dragon Ball Kai episode 19 through 31. Then you can watch the Lord Slug movie. Again, this is optional. This movie doesn't really fit into the timeline that well, so I squeezed it in here. It's listed here after the first mention of Super Saiyan, even though most fans would put this movie between the Saiyan saga and Frieza saga, due to Goku's weird Saiyan transformation at the end. It further teases the real form while also not ruining the reveal when Vegeta mentions Super Saiyan. After that, you can watch Dragon Ball Kai episode 32 through 54. Then you can watch Dragon Ball episode of Bardock. This is optional. It's more of a special. It's Bardock still kind of fresh in your mind, and no use in waiting until after Dragon Ball Z to watch this, honestly though. It's relatively short and gives new viewers a taste of the animation style they'll eventually see in Super. So, yeah, you'll see this style carrying forward through Super. Then you can watch the original Dragon Ball Z. This would be the Garlic Jr. saga for filler. That's 108 through 117 of the Dragon Ball Z episodes. Again, optional, but it's pretty important filler that a lot of people will reference in the community, so I would definitely suggest checking that out. Then you can watch Dragon Ball Kai episodes 55 through 58. And then some Dragon Ball Z filler, episode 125. This is optional, but the driving license episode is a nice breath of fresh air between action, and you'd be surprised at the amount of fans that reference this, so this is kind of important. Then you'll want to watch Cooler's Revenge. Again, optional if you're including the movies. This is Cooler coming to Earth to avenge Frieza. Goku is there and no Super Saiyan, and it has to be during the time skip. Dragon Ball Kai, episodes 59 through 64. Then you can watch Dragon Ball Z, History of Trunks. Then you can watch Dragon Ball Kai, episodes 65 through 85. Then Dragon Ball Z, some filler from the original anime, that would be 170 through 171. This is some cute filler for Gohan set after Dragon Ball Kai, episode 85. So Goku leaving for the Earth's Guardian business aligns with Gohan going on his own filler quest. This is just kind of cute Gohan filler. I would recommend you watch it. Not a lot of people in the fandom reference this a lot, but I just personally like it. Then you can watch The Return of Cooler. That is optional again if you're including the movies. Then you can watch Super Android 13. And then Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan. So this is still optional like the movies are, but Broly's a beast, and not to get into spoilers, but this is pretty important, so I would actually suggest Broly Legendary Super Saiyan is probably the only movie on this list that I would say is required, other than some of the later movies we'll get to. Dragon Ball Kai would be next with episodes 86 through 98. Then you can watch BoJack Unbound. That's another optional movie. The Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans. Again, this is optional. There's also a remake of this called Plan to Eradicate the Super Saiyans, which I would also suggest being a nice choice. That just has updated animation and some of the pace is fixed a bit. This is extremely optional, by the way, because it's kind of just like a special, so you really don't need to watch it. But a lot of people do reference it from time to time, so I would suggest you do. Dragon Ball Z, the Otherworld Tournament Saga, which is filler. This would be 195 through 199. You can watch Dragon Ball Kai after this. This is actually Dragon Ball Kai, the final chapters. So if you're brand new, let me just give you a brief history lesson. So whenever they did Dragon Ball Kai, at least in the US, it was from the Saiyan Saga to the Cell Saga. Again, if you're brand new, you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's okay, just bear with me. Pretty much, a third of the show was done, remade after Dragon Ball Z. And that's what Dragon Ball Kai is. Dragon Ball Kai is pretty much Dragon Ball Z, but without all the filler. So I've tried to list important filler or filler that I like on this list from Dragon Ball Z that you can go back and watch. Dragon Ball Kai Final Chapters is kind of like that last part of Dragon Ball that you need to watch as a Dragon Ball fan. Anyway, so yeah, you need to watch Dragon Ball Kai Final Chapters 99 through 100. That would be including the episode list if you're going based off Dragon Ball Kai. Again, it shouldn't be too much of a struggle to understand that. But if you get on a website, then... Like, if you get on a website and you're streaming and they have Dragon Ball Kai and Dragon Ball Kai Final Chapters listed as different series, they might have this listed as episode 1, so you'll have to keep that in mind and bear with me. You can also go to Wikipedia and go down with the episode list and the episode numbers and kind of cross-reference to figure out where you're at on this list. Then for Dragon Ball Z, episode 202, it's a fun filler episode for Gohan and Videl. It's a personal favorite of mine. Then Dragon Ball Kai Final Chapters, episode 101 to 104. Then Broly, The Second Coming. A lot of people don't like the second and third Broly movie. We'll get to the third one. This is the second one. So it's optional, but I feel like this is a good place to place it in the timeline, since it's right before the tournament where most fans would set it. Then Dragon Ball Kai Final Chapters, episodes 105 through 119. Then you can watch Bio Broly. A little bit of a spoiler warning here, minor spoilers. This movie has to take place after the tournament since the Z Fighters aren't around, but Goten, Trunks, 18, and Krillin are. It's a little weird, but since 119 is when the deal is made between 18 and Hercule, which is referenced here, then I think you should watch this before Dragon Ball Kai Final Chapters, episode 120. Alright, so after you watch Bio Broly, you can watch Dragon Ball Kai Final Chapters 120 through 140. And then you can watch Fusion Reborn. Again, it's optional only if you're including the movies. Then Dragon Ball Kai Final Chapters 141 through 165. Now, you're pretty close to finishing final chapters. You're not quite done yet. Bear with me. I know you're ready to probably finish the Dragon Ball show, Dragon Ball Kai, but you've got a little bit more to go. So, Wrath of the Dragon, again, is optional if you're including movies. I really enjoy Wrath of the Dragon. I think it stands on its own quite well, so I would actually recommend you watch it. Then you can watch Yo! Son Goku and His Friends Return. Now, I know I said this was for English dub fans, but it's also for people if you want more of a broad understanding of Dragon Ball and understand all the references. So, this and a earlier OVA I referenced, well, two of them, episode of Bardock and Plan to Eradicate the Super Saiyans. Those are pretty much only in Japan with English subtitles. This is also only in Japan with English subtitles. I know it's a weird choice to include Yo! Son Goku and His Friends Return before the end of Z, but it fits in the timeline and it works as least confusing here rather than watching it after Super. And the canon of this OVA is in dispute, but it introduces a couple concepts that will actually be brought up again in Battle of Gods and Dragon Ball Super Broly. If you know, you know. I won't spoil that here, but if you know, you know. Dragon Ball Kai, you will want to watch that next. That would be Dragon Ball Kai, final chapters 166 through 167. Okay, at this point, you're done with Dragon Ball Super. Good job. Not Dragon Ball Super, my bad. No, not Dragon Ball Super, that's later. At this point, you're done with Dragon Ball Z. And whenever I say Dragon Ball Z, I'm referencing the Dragon Ball Z filler that I suggested, the Dragon Ball Z movies and OVAs I suggested, as well as Dragon Ball Kai, which once again is just Dragon Ball Z, but without the filler and better pacing and a new dub and stuff like that. Next, you'll want to watch Dragon Ball GT. Now, this is not optional. I know I said other stuff was optional, but Dragon Ball GT is not optional. You can watch the entire series in order. Some lists have you skip non-canon GT and go straight into Super, but this is for you to become a proper fan of the series and understand it intimately. Like it or not, GT was the end of the series for many years, so that's why I suggest you at least get the experience of watching GT so you can understand as a fan why people hate it, why people love it, why it's a bit controversial. I don't think you really need to skip it, and I don't recommend watching it after Super either. I think part of the experience is watching it before Super. Then you can watch Dragon Ball GT: A Hero's Legacy. Again, this is not optional. It's a OVA or special concluding GT properly. It's set before the time skip in the last episode of GT, but most people wouldn't want to pause the last episode halfway through and then go watch the GT: A Hero's Legacy special, and then go back to the last episode of GT and continue it. So that's why I suggest just watching this after GT. So going through GT is pretty straightforward. Alright, next you want to watch Dragon Ball Super episodes 1 and 2. And then you'll want to watch the Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods movie. And this is required. You can skip the arc in the anime as it doesn't add anything and it stretches it out as well. So what do I mean by that? Well, Dragon Ball Z released the Battle of Gods movie after years of not having any Dragon Ball Z content. And then they released the Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F movie. And then they decided to make the Dragon Ball Super anime, so they went and adapted Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. But, like I said, episode 1 and 2 of Dragon Ball Super wasn't part of that Battle of Gods adaptation. It added new stuff that I feel really went a long way to fleshing out Dragon Ball Super before they went into the adaptation. So that's why I said you can watch episodes 1 and 2 of Dragon Ball Super and then watch the Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods movie. Alright, after you watch the Battle of Gods movie, you can watch Dragon Ball Super episode 15 through 131. That's right. After Battle of Gods, I think you can watch Super's Resurrection F arc, as it adds things like, again, minor spoilers here, just a couple of name mentions. If you've never seen Dragon Ball, then you'll probably forget this, so I wouldn't worry about it. It adds things like Tagoma, Ginyu, Piccolo, and some things with Gohan, stuff like that. After that, Super is fairly easy to grasp as you watch. Now, again, though, this is a bit of a toss-up because I understand if you would also want to skip the Resurrection F arc in the Dragon Ball Super anime and just watch the Resurrection F movie. So this is going to be my only spot on the list where I say just go with what your gut tells you. If you want a condensed version of this story, you can watch the movie, or you can watch the arc in the anime if you feel like getting the full experience. Because I think this arc changes much more than the Battle of Gods arc, to where it's more of a toss-up. Alright, after this, you can watch the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. This is the first movie with the Dragon Ball Super subtitle attached to it. And this is also the most epic and well-animated movie, I think, in Dragon Ball. I would definitely watch this after you finish the Dragon Ball Super anime. At this point, if you're anime only, then you'd watch Superhero. However, if you're willing to read the manga, then you're in luck. For the manga, I would suggest starting with chapter 42, the latest chapter out, which is 89 of the recording. These chapters will be covering the Moro and Granola saga. So, that would be chapter 40 through... sorry. A little bit of a misspeak there. Chapter 42 through 89. That's what I meant to say. That's the latest chapters covering the Moro and Granola saga. Currently, the manga just wrapped up the superhero prequel arc. And then now the manga will be starting the superhero adaptation at the time of recording. And at this point, after you get caught up to this part of the manga, then you can watch Dragon Ball Super Superhero the movie. Once you watch this, you'll be caught up. You can go back and read the manga as it comes out monthly. Again, at the time of recording, we're adapting the movie, so you might not want to do that just yet. Still craving more Dragon Ball? The games are a fun way to experience the story again from different perspectives. I'd suggest starting from the Xenoverse games, as they are more modern and play off fun what-if scenarios. They're pretty fun. After that, you can just look at whatever games most appeal to you. Now, if you're a more experienced Dragon Ball fan, you may be asking me, why don't you recommend Budokai Tenkaichi 3? Why don't you recommend Legacy of Goku? Well, those are older games, and if you're thinking from the perspective of a new fan who's just now getting into it, they might want a more modern game. That might be what's better for them to start with. So that's why I would suggest the Xenoverse games. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is also a fun game, but that's more of a straight adaptation of Dragon Ball Z. So since this whole journey just finished, you probably don't want to immediately go back and play the game of it. That's why I would think you will want to play the Xenoverse games, because they're more what-if scenarios where you get to make your own character, interact in the story of Dragon Ball as things change around you from what you know from the story. So that's why I would suggest that. All in all, this in-depth list was seeking to narrow down the watch order in the best order for an English-speaking fan. If you just want to read the manga, you can do that. If you want to watch the anime, you can do that. But if you want to experience everything in the most concise way possible, including some filler, this is the way I would suggest, as it's the way I personally would like. So, what did you think of my list? Do you have a better one? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to see more. This video was definitely more of an experiment. I usually don't do these types of videos, but this is definitely one that I've been thinking up for a while. I did a ton of research to do this. I went back and cross-referenced things. It was a bit convoluted, but again, if you made it this far, you pretty much came for the convoluted order. So anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off.